Hello everyone, we are live yet again, and this is going to be for one of my authors chats of the week. And as I'm playing with my lighting, oh, maybe that's too much, I'm going to also keep my eye out because I'm waiting for my co-host, and then we'll get things going. We'll be talking about books, writing, publishing, and everything in between for the next hour. And I am super excited because towards the end of last week, I finished the first draft of one of my secret projects. So that's really exciting for me. And right now I'm spending the next week, I want it to be done by the end of this one, but probably next one, where I'm doing my reread just to make sure everything flows well together. And then I'll put it to what I call the bookish bed for a little while, where it will sleep there. I don't know why my thing's not. There we go. Good, my invite sent. And until I'm ready to bring it out and start really getting into the editing. But I have other projects that need the editing process right now. Hello.
Hey, I'm trying to figure out how to get my camera on, and there it goes. Okay, awesome.
Yes, I hear you, don't see you. There we go, we're up and rolling.
Hey.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Great, and thank you for coming and joining me this evening.
Of
and
course.
I love seeing the likes already. We haven't really gotten going. So I don't know if you've ever listened to any of my live chats. They're pretty casual. We just talk about books, what we write, that kind of thing. And I always let my co-host, which is you this week, introduce yourself and what you write.
Awesome.
Right?
All right, so you want me to get started then?
Yeah, do your pitch,
okay.
whatever it is.
Yeah, so I'm Hallie Christensen. I write middle grade. That's kind of where my voice is at. And in the genres, I like to write fantasy and then also kind of like to write spooky paranormal books, but not like too spooky because I don't even like getting scared myself.
Well, then I think heading into that season, let me ask, because I haven't talked with enough people who write in kind of a spooky horror theme. So do sales pick up around, when people start thinking about Halloween? Okay, I was just curious. It felt like it should, but I wasn't positive.
Yes, sales picked up, and then also if I ever have books that are going to go out in submissions, that are going to be scary books, we try to wait till the September, October, because even editors are more interested in reading mood reads around the spooky season. So yeah.
Oh, that's really neat. I never thought about that, but that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So for your you said middle grade series, what made you decide that's what you wanted to write? Because, I mean, a lot of people like to write adult because they like to read, or YA because that's what they like to read. So what made you think middle grade is where you wanted to write a series?
Well, when I first started writing, I thought I would write young adult, and I actually have like an unfinished young adult fantasy that I started some years ago. Mm-hmm. But when I first started writing, people suggested for me to practice, to like get myself involved in writing communities and things online. And if you're familiar with Wattpad, I did have a profile on there, and someone was like, "Hey, there's a novella contest that's coming up. You should, you should try it." And they gave like 50 different prompts, and they all ranged between picture book to adult. But like literally the very first prompt spoke to me, because it's like 3 siblings have to spend a holiday with a relative that they don't like, and stuff happens. And that was basically what the prompt was. And I was like, oh, I've got this. And I just started writing. And honestly, it was probably the easiest a story has ever come to me. And I realized it was younger voice. I don't know if it's because I'm a kid at heart, or I've been still watching cartoons because I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and so I've still got the mindset of an 11-year-old. But it was so fun to write, and I just enjoyed just that adventure and hope and just life that middle grade books have. So I was like, I really like this. And that was the book that eventually did get picked up by a small press and was published, and that's my middle grade fantasy that is out. And so ever since then, I've just kept writing in middle grade because that voice just comes so easily to me. It's enjoyable.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. And it's wonderful because I've had both experiences. I've had experiences where I've written books and they just come so easy, like you said. And I've just finished one of those, and it's so refreshing because, it just felt like it was meant to be almost.
Yes.
And the words come easily. But that's not always the case. I've definitely, since I'm a series writer, we'll get, 2 later books of a series, and then trying to wrap up maybe all the loose ends, or if your story's building out, it can bog down and slow down. And I actually had a different project earlier on this year where I had to like pause because it was like pulling teeth. It was not, it was the opposite. And I was like, I need to do something else for a time because if I'm having this much trouble, then something's not right.
Yeah. No, and I say that it's so much fun to write, but no, I definitely have hit the pulling teeth, hitting your head up against the keyboard, weeping, wailing, gnashing of teeth, all that kind of stuff with manuscripts. And especially like this past summer, a lot has been changing in middle grade. And just from subscribing to like Publishers Weekly Marketplace, they have free emails. And I've been reading through like just news articles that they've had. And it's like middle grade word count. They want it lower, everything lower. My middle grade fantasy that I had on submissions was at 60,000. And they're wanting it more like in the 40s. So this past summer, I cut like 11,000 from it to put it at 49,000. And then I took some other classes and they're like middle grade prefer first person. So one of my paranormal books, I rewrote from third to first person, which just made me want to scream because there's so much that's different because it's like that third person narration can know more, but the first person I'm living inside their head. And that was just totally new for me. And so this whole summer has been like the summer of editing and my last edits I hope to finish actually tomorrow, and then I'm actually going to take like a couple weeks break and read actual books other than stuff that I've written.
Oh yeah, and kudos to you because I'm typically a person who likes to write in third person and that's where I'm comfortable. I did challenge myself once to write a short story, mind you, a short story in first person, and that was a challenge to write, and I gave it to my editor, and my editor was like, oh Lord. She was just like, you might want to reconsider wanting to do this, and I was like, yeah, no, it wasn't, it was harder than I thought, so I respect people who make that switch, because, again, something usually comes easier to an author in one way or another, and being able to be adaptable is a fantastic skill. It's one that I don't naturally or inherently have.
And I did a lot of research because, I was seeing kids like that perspective of being inside the person's mind, which obviously the best way to do that is first person. But yeah, like all the books that I had read were in third, and I even did research, and probably 70% of the fantasy books I picked up for middle grade were still written in third person. But when it did come to scary books, a lot of them, only a few were in third person. Mm-hmm. And one of them was one of my favorite series, which is Small Spaces by Katharine Arden. It's a quartet of series of 4. She wrote, it's going to be behind me somewhere. She wrote the Bear and the Nightingale series. That is a YA fantasy that like takes place in like the 1300s in Russia. So it was a time period that wasn't really written a lot about, but I listened to it on audiobook because there's so many Russian names. But it was super enjoyable to read.
Well, I've had I'm trying to keep it one of those chameleon eyes that, again, very hard to do, to keep up with everybody in the chat. And I do see a couple people asking or mentioning and talking about wanting new books to read. Oh. So let me ask you, I'm going to ask a different, what is one book of yours, since you have multiple, that you would recommend if you didn't know anybody? Say, which book would you be like, this is the first book you should read of my own? And then, do you have another book that's either yours or someone else's that you would also recommend for people who, just are interested in finding new books?
Right. So like a book I've written?
Yeah. One book that you've written, one that you suggest just because.
So I will probably suggest my middle grade fantasy, which, yes, I realize it is middle grade, but it's like fun, it's adventure, and there are some intense moments in it because it takes place at their creepy great aunt's house, and she lives in the woods, and so they think she's a witch, but like nobody believes them. It's one of those things like, why don't the adults believe me? But it's a lot of fun. It's called Enchanted Misadventures with Great Aunt Poppy, and I've had many adults who've read it with their kids say that it was just enjoyable for them, and I add humor in there, so it's funny for them to read too. So that would be the book of mine that I would suggest. And in that same middle grade vein, if you're looking for a scary book or a spooky book, since we're coming up on that season, I'll suggest again the Small Spaces series by Katharine Arden, and then I think I have it up here. Let me check real quick. You will see I'm wearing sweatpants. Okay. I have not read it yet, but I've heard great reviews on it. It's The Clackety by Laura. Okay, it's Senf. So Snip. And it's a trilogy, and it's supposed to be just creepy enough to be like spine tingling. That's not like too scary, but it's, I guess more of like a sinister. But it's for middle grade. So if you're like wanting spooky books, all my scary books I read are middle grade. I have not ventured into the adult range when it comes to scary books, just because, like I said, I don't actually like being scared. And I think the reason why I like spooky books, reading them like middle grade level, is because I know what it's like to be scared, and that's why I can write that, because all the senses that you feel when you're scared, I'm very aware of what those are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. And I guess for my books, it's hard to recommend because I do write dramatically different age brackets. And so adult, young adult, new adult. And, but I know the series that I'm working on will be my second series, completed series by the end of the year, is my adult one. Now that's a dark fantasy that dabbles in the grimdark side. So very different than what you write, but that is my retelling of Nordic myth. And they're novellas, so they're quick reads. There are a bunch of them, but they're real quick and fun to get into. But I just chose that one because it's the counterbalance of what you did. So the really dark, gritty adult side versus the fun adventure, and again, the coming to terms with different kind of emotions like fear, like you were saying, for the middle grade stuff. So great suggestions.
I'm looking behind the bookshelf.
Question for you, actually. This is actually a good question. So when people divide age brackets, some people aren't familiar with all of them. How do you define middle grade?
Okay, so middle grade books, it's different than middle school, because middle school, you think like 12 to 13, 14-year-olds. Middle grade books are for 8-year-olds to 12-year-olds. So they're just coming out of those chapter books, and chapter books are the ones that have like the still full page illustrations and like very large print chapters, usually around like 100 pages long. And we're going into novels, which are more, 150 to 300 pages, kind of look more like what a young adult novel is, but they're usually centered around kids ages 8 to 12 years old. And kids like to read books about kids that are like their age or a little bit older. So the only downside of middle grade is that you do have that just short time period of like 4 years there that the kids are like interested in reading it. And then once they're 12, they usually bump up to YA. But there is a space there for like 13, 14, and 15-year-olds where we need more books with protagonists of that age, because those kids, like 13-year-olds, are not quite ready for, just fantasy with 17-year-old characters. Yeah, they're not ready for older YA.
New adult, but yeah, the older YA. And that's the only thing is, I think unfortunately, a lot of authors have like preconceived things, and they don't actually fact check the age differences. And so yeah, YA starts at 13. My YA series starts at 13, as in my characters are 13, 14, and go up. And that's why my other series, which a lot of people look at the first book and they're like, isn't that YA? Because the characters are 17, 18, 19. I'm like, no, it's new adult. And that's also why the topics get a lot darker. And I would not be comfortable with a 13-year-old reading certain scenes of that series, but I've had multiple 12-year-olds tell me they love it. And that makes me feel a little awkward.
Oh, a little awkward. Well, but your protagonist starts at 13, right? I think that's great.
They like the, I get notes about them reading my new adult series. So
gotcha. Okay. Awkward.
That makes sense. Yeah, 13. That's why I'm like, if you like that, reread my YA series. It's fun, and it's adventure, and it's quest, and it's everything you want in a big sweeping fantasy, but it is a more family-friendly fantasy because it is catered to the younger side of YA, and it is supposed to be approachable by, again, like you said, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, potentially, 12-year-olds that don't get enough, I think, love in literature because everybody wants to write the older side of the teen bracket.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I was just trying to, I saw that pop up. Okay, so let me ask you, so in the part of marketing, because I know for myself, I'm an indie author, and marketing is all on my shoulders. When it comes to trying to market for middle grade, I've heard people recommend, kind of even with the younger side of YA, you market for the adults to buy for the kids. Or how do you reach the right readers for your books?
Right. Now, it is, that's a tricky one to get around. So obviously, yes, my readers, 8 to 12-year-olds, if they are on social media, they are not there looking up books like our adult and young adult readers are. So my marketing, a lot of it, yes, is reaching out to educators, teachers, librarians, and parents. And some of my main income is from school visits, and it's just selling my books at the visits, because more so with that younger age, not that young adults aren't interested in how an author works, but children are fascinated with the fact that you've written a book and have so many questions, and they love for you to come visit and to talk about writing. I have a author school visit coming up in October, where I'm going to go to an elementary school and talk to them about the writing process, because it's part of their curriculum to learn how to do narrative writing. And so she's already told me they have a ton of questions, which I'm excited about. So, and for marketing that way, I either reach out to the schools, usually to the librarians. I'll put things in newspapers or in local magazines, letting people know that I am open for school visits. But yes, most of my marketing comes from doing visits, since I have a younger crowd that I'm marketing to.
I like that, because I'm always curious, because I think that's one thing I struggle with my, again, the younger side of YA, is trying to reach that right group of readers for that particular series, because I'm not marketing to the older crowd who's usually on social media, who's on other kind of ways to see, you know, however you're marketing or advertising. So it can be a struggle, and it's nice to hear that, you know, you found some ways to reach the readers and build your following, and especially because a middle grade is something that, again, I would like to see more of. And I haven't actually met a lot of authors writing that particular age bracket. And I see a question popping up saying, while you're in that area, do you go to the libraries for author signings?
Oh, great question. So usually for the school visits, I will offer doing author signings at those. And if there is a library close by, I can reach out to them and just say, hey, I'm going to be in town. If you would like for me to come and do an author visit and a signing. I have done that before, a couple author signings at libraries. So yeah, you can always just reach out to anyone in that area while you're there and just see if they're interested in it.
Yeah, and I know for myself, one of the things that I'm trying to get more and more into, scheduling and time allowing, is doing different kind of festivals and conventions, because those are another ways, especially depending on the festival, to bring families, if you're doing the family side of things, or just people curious in general about books and literature, depending on whatever you write. And so those are another ways to meet people, find new readers, do signings, and those are really fun.
Yes, I've been to a few book festivals, and I have one coming up in October. Book festivals are great for authors because people are there solely to buy books. Mm-hmm. Crafts shows, I've seen authors not do as well because people are there to buy the crafts. But when it's just a book fair, your whole crowd is readers, and they're there to read. And I have sold quite a few copies at book festival, and it's really enjoyable to meet readers, meet new readers. So yeah, and a couple other things, just since I write for children, I go to conferences. Like this past March, I went to the Faye Kegler Children's Conference that's at the University of Southern Mississippi. It's a huge children's conference for educators. It's for nationwide, and they meet in Mississippi because there's a lot of big awards that get handed out there that I had no idea about. But I presented a workshop on marketing and social media. And because of that, I didn't realize, since I was presenting, that my book would be available at the bookstore. So I was able to do signings there as well. So that was fun. So just getting involved, you know, you have to kind of like break out of your comfort zone some and speak at conferences. But it's really, I mean, everyone's there. They're always so nice, and they love books and they love to read. So it's like they want to be there and they enjoy being there. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That finding, you know, a convention that I felt overlaps your genre theme can also be interesting, because it may not just be focused 100% on reading and literature, but if you write fantasy and you find a fantasy convention, sci-fi for sci-fi, you know, I write Viking fantasy. Well, there's a Viking festival somewhere that overlaps too. You know, you can find different ways and make it a lot of fun, and again, meet new readers. And that's kind of the point of being a writer. And let me just make sure I see some other questions popping up. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything, because I love the likes. Keep the likes coming. Do we use street teams? Do you have a street team?
Yes, I created one for when my fantasy book released a couple years ago, And I just did signups on social media asking people if they want to help. If anyone's not familiar what a street team is, it's just usually a group of people that for free help to promote your book on release day. And usually either you give them a graphic of your book or something to put up on social media, and they put it up on their social medias. And usually for my street team, like I give them perks, like a free arc, or, you know, in the future when I do it again, you know, I'll give them like either bookmarks or stickers, or usually there's character art print that you mail out to them just as a thank you for doing that. But yeah, definitely when I have another book release, I'll create a street team again for that.
And for myself, I don't know if I don't think I've ever really utilized street teams as I should. It's something that when I find the theoretical extra time to develop one, that would be great. And it is on my list of to-dos at some point. I do have things like art teams and readers groups and stuff like that, but not a traditional street team, because I've never actually utilized people to be like, hey, do you want to help me promote? I think it's that PTSD from when I was a Girl Scout and had to like knock on doors and be like, do you want to buy these cookies? I never was comfortable with that. And so asking people, hey, do you want to market for me is still a struggle, even though I need to do that as an author. Need to do that.
Just FYI, I will never turn down Girl Scout cookies. I love Girl Scout cookies.
That's true, but it was as a child, you know.
Yes, I understand, but yes.
It's bewildering. But stuff. Anywho, okay, so what is your next project? You mentioned a little bit on your next release. You would potentially make a street team for that. What are you working on now, and do you have any idea of a release date for your upcoming or next coming project?
So, great question. So right now I'm on submissions, and again, I'll just explain this in case anyone viewing on here is not familiar what on submission is. So I have a literary agent, and she submits my books to editors at publishing companies. And so I'm trying the traditional publishing route. And so my fantasy book that's on submissions, I would love for it to pick up. So let's say timeline, if it's going to go out on submissions again next week. Let's say somebody absolutely loves it. That'd be great. But this is all hypothetical. And let's say that in a month from now, they offer to purchase it. It then is probably like a 3-month process before their publisher actually makes the finalized contract, because there's some back and forth. And then from there, it's usually a 1.5 years before the book actually comes out at the soonest. Sometimes it can be just a year, I guess, depending on how well the book fits what they want and if there's not much that they want edited. So any of my books, potentially, if picked up this year, would be out in 2 years. Now, some of my books, if they don't get bought on submissions, I'm going to try to submit them to smaller presses, and they could potentially get out quicker because smaller presses have a quicker turnaround. A lot of people have asked me why not consider indie publishing, and the main thing is marketing. I write children's books, and it's very difficult to market it, and having a publisher at least be able to get it in stores for me helps me out tremendously.
Understand.
Or I would 100% try indie publishing, but it's like I know it would struggle with the marketing. So I have a fantasy out. I have a paranormal that I'm finishing up. I think I'm going to call it like a paranormal fantasy because there's ghosts and witches in it. And then I actually attempted to write a cozy fantasy for middle grade. And I know most of our viewers here know what cozy fantasy is. It's very popular right now on TikTok. But every children's like book place that I went to, and you can get advice from agents and stuff, and like just like they could look at like a couple pages. They're like, what is this cozy fantasy? Like nobody had heard of it.
As mainstream yet as
it's not. And so I was just kind of looked at me like there's like I was crazy or something. I'm like, no, this exists. It exists. And I would go through like explaining like what is a cozy fantasy, and I'm like, it's got all the same fantastical elements and creatures, but it's low stakes, and it's usually interpersonal stuff that they're dealing with. And they're like, okay. I'm like, I'm not making it up. So yeah. Hopefully I can find editors who have heard of cozy fantasy and who will be very interested in it. And that will be going out to them within the next, hopefully, month. So yeah.
I will have to verify this. One of my author friends, I talked with him last week, Marshall J. Moore, who's also on here.
Yes,
he was mentioning that there is again, if I didn't mix up his schedule, there is an online convention for cozy.
Oh, really?
Coming up in another month or so. And so anybody, I think they're still signing up, so you can just go to it on the, while you're at your house sipping your own tea or coffee, whatever. I'm a coffee person, but and attend. And I don't know, because I haven't read cozy, so I haven't looked into it, but I would be shocked if it was just authors versus authors and agents and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know the details, but that does exist.
No, that would be awesome. I'd love to attend that. And yes, I know Marshall, not like on a BFF basis, but we've sent, messages like 1 or 2 times or liked each other's posts. So
yeah, I'm going to try to remember. I have my notepad, but let's just see if I remember to read the note to see if I can reach out and just verify. Then I'll try to pass that information over to you. And I did see, and I know people are commenting, and I will get to as many as I can. Someone in the comments sounds like talking about loving to review and read. Now, I do have an ARC team, and the ARCs are open right now, but that's through the link in my bio. If you like my kind of fantasy, but that's YA, new adult literature, and all sorts of fantasy. Do you do anything like ARCs since you go traditional? I don't know much of traditional in that sense of having people read advanced copies. And do you do anything like that, or is that all controlled by whoever you're publishing through?
So the small press that I published the middle grade fantasy through, they allowed me to do ARCs to get reviews in advance. So, and I definitely utilize that. If I was published with one of the larger publishing companies, they would probably use NetGalley or Edelweiss, because I do have a friend that she's got a romantasy book coming out next March. And that's what she's using as NetGalley and Edelweiss. And she's being published with, I can't remember which one of the top 5 it is, because they have so many different imprints and it's hard to keep up with them.
They have a lot.
But she's publishing with them, and that's how they do it. So yeah, smaller press, I think you have a little bit more leeway. Larger press, they have to use something like NetGalley, where they pick and choose who gets the ARCs. I mean, if it was up to me, everybody would just get an ARC, because reviews are great and it's really helpful too. But
I get it. And again, there's pros and cons of going through both publishing things, and one of the things is you don't have as much control of certain things traditional, but they also take some of that burden off your shoulder for, like you said, marketing, advertising, getting your books out there. And I do see a comment saying there are some great subreddits as far as marketing and getting your word out in your genre. So there you go, in case you are interested.
I would definitely be interested.
But yeah, it is very dramatically different ways to approach publishing now. And I never thought about it, but it makes a lot of sense when you're doing children's or middle grade, or even, depending on how young of a YA is, going more of a traditional or a hybridized route where you utilize or are able to utilize some of the resources through a publisher is fantastic.
Yeah.
So what was it that made you decide, I'm going to wake up one day and write a book?
So I have listened to so many authors on podcasts and everything, and I feel like everybody has the same approach, and some people are different, but they're like, ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to write a book. And that's kind of was the same for me. I mean, I loved reading, and I did always want to write a book, and I always had like this inner monologue going on in my brain and just thought my life was so fascinating and should be a book. But the big thing was that in the 90s, when I was in elementary school, they had young authors conferences. So I'm from Alabama. I don't know if anybody's picked up on a Southern accent, but so I'm from Alabama, and I would go to these young author conferences. And before you went, in your class, you would go over how to write a story, and you would be given these blank hardback books, and you could illustrate the front, you can illustrate the pages, and you would write your book inside. And then when you went to the conference, you got to read your book to other people who were in your group, and they'd be from different schools. But the fun part was that you'd get to meet an author. And there were so many different authors, but the one I remember the most was Stephen Kellogg, because if you go look up his picture books, I'm sure you've probably read one, because he wrote hundreds of them, and he was his own illustrator as well, so he has a very unique style. But it was just so much fun getting to meet an author, listening to them speak, having them autograph your book, and then you also getting to read your own book. And I always wanted to write a book, but it wasn't until after college that I actually sat down and did it, because the main daunting thing was, how do you start this thing? Where is it going? And then it's like, how do you even construct a novel? The whole thing just seemed like so overwhelming. And then one day I was just like, okay, you just need to do it. And so I was like, okay, let's try a picture book. And so like I wrote a little picture book about a dragon. That was fun. It's like, okay, well maybe let's try a novel. So I wrote a novel and I was like, oh, this thing's amazing. It was not. I paid a lot of money off on Readsy to get it edited by like a professional editor. And then I was like, okay, I paid a lot of money for this, get edited professionally. This will get bought. Didn't even get an agent. So it's like, okay, that one gets shelved. And then I start writing another book, it gets shelved. And then the third book I wrote, the third book got picked up by a small press. And then the fourth book, that one got an agent. So it's like I started small and just I kept working at it. But it's just a lot of my videos on my TikTok page, they talk about rejection. Because it's like one thing with a traditionally published author, and I'm sure, Indy, you face it as well. It's rejection, and it's something that those authors never told me at those author conferences. But if they had, I probably wouldn't have written a book. And I now realize that because when I go to classes now, I do tell them about how many books I had to write. And I do let them know how many rejections I had from agents before a book got picked up, which was 200. Because I want them to know, rejection happens, but you have to keep trying. The ones who get the books published, they don't give up. You have to keep going even though you keep hearing no. So.
Yeah, and regardless of if you're that super rare diamond in the rough who has the first book published and makes it big, great, fantastic, good for you. But that's not usually the case. And like you said, there is that work of you write a book, then you write your next book, and you write your next book. And the point being is each time you theoretically want to improve. So each book you do, you want to challenge yourself to be better than the last. So no matter what, your first book's going to not be great when you look back at it so many years later, because wherever you are then should be far more advanced. Craft and storytelling and character development and all that kind of fun stuff. So when you write, let me ask, do you stick with like one POV, multiple? Do you play around with it depending on your book and series? Or what do you like to do, or how do you like to tell your story?
Yes. So far I've been sticking with just the one point of view. And I would like to branch out into other points of view, but it's just, even with having one point of view and having side characters, that's difficult enough because they all have different personalities and they need to sound different. But then to like have different point of views, I feel like it's a further extension of that. And it's just like, I don't know, I'm always so amazed with fantasy authors and like the worlds that they create and just even if they like create like languages in their worlds as well, because I don't know, I still feel like even though I have books published, there's so much that I still need to learn. I feel like I'm not that amazing of an author. Like I look at like Brandon Sanderson, taking a summer vacation and pumping out an 800-page book. And it's like, how did you create that? And how are all your stories not so similar to each other? Because you all deal in fantasy. It's like, how do they not overlap? And I know some are part of the whatever, and so they're like within the same universe. But still, I'm amazed by authors and their ability to do that. If I would work at it, I guess maybe I'm lazy. If I would work at it, I could do a multiple point of view. But right now, I'm cool with just that one point of view and having like a bunch of side characters, and I can keep those people organized. So.
And like everything you're going to hear me say multiple times, there is no right or wrong way, and it all depends, especially as an author, how you want to tell your story. Because I've up until now have been writing one POV. I feel comfortable with that. It makes sense to me. But I have a book waiting in the wings that is my first 3 POV book, and it was a fun and different challenge, but it also helped me tell the story in a way that I wouldn't be able to with one person, because you read some of the big sweeping epic fantasy styles and you have characters moving around the board. Now, if you have too many characters with POVs, I feel like in my mind, you're going to have all these like, how do you keep track of that?
Yeah.
Issues. But yeah, there's just different ways to tell stories. And it would be kind of interesting to see different authors write the same story, but in their own style, and see how similar and how different. Like if someone just had like, here's the bare bones of the story. I want you all to write it, get to the same ending, but write it in your style. That would be kind of cool.
That would be, because you would get however many authors, you would get that many different types of stories.
Exactly. And it will be drastically different. Now, let me also ask, because you are traditional, where do you have any recommended place for people to find your books? Or because you're traditional published, you know, it doesn't matter. Get them anywhere. But where can people go and find your books if they're interested in getting them?
So it was with a smaller press. So their main distribution, while they can get into brick and mortar stores, is online. And I don't want to say the A place that you can get it that rhymes with Schmamazon, because I do want you to support your local indie bookstores because they can order it from there as well. I forget what the site's called, but whatever site indie bookstores order books from, or that's connected with indie bookstores, my book is available from. So it's available anywhere online. But yeah, I'll put in a plug for supporting small businesses and getting it from there.
Hey, I love that. I absolutely love that. And that's one of the reasons why I started with Zon exclusive, and then I moved to distribute through my website as well, and I'm heading toward taking my ebooks and audiobooks and down the line my physical copies and have them wide distribution, because it is very important to be able to support small businesses and your local bookshops and bookstores and your libraries and everything like that, and I want to be able to have my books there as well. So I'll sacrifice some things to take it that way. We'll see how it goes. It's a game. Because we don't know. And unfortunately, this is why Zon is as big and controlling as they can, because they pay better than a lot of other places, which is sad. But I do not want to put all my eggs in that basket, and I want to be able to support, you know, smaller businesses. So yeah. But another thing I also want to ask, it's one of the questions I always love to ask everybody during these lives, because if this platform's nice, I'll be able to repurpose this on my YouTube channel and put all your content information below. But for everybody here, where can people find and follow you outside of Book Talk if they want to keep in the know? Do you have a website? Do you have a newsletter? Are you on other socials? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So we'll start with website. It's authorhalliechristensen.com. And I've got a little pop-up on there where you can sign up for my newsletter as well. I don't send them out too often, maybe just quarterly, and they're just like usually writing updates, festivals that I've attended, just things like that. I am also on Instagram, same username, Hallie Chris Writes. I'm also on the Twitter formerly known as X, but that one's as Hallie_Christian because Hallie Chris Writes was apparently already taken, or maybe it was too long. I can't remember. But the main places where I'm at is TikTok and Instagram. Every once in a while I'm on Twitter. I have tried those other places. I've tried Blue Sky. I've tried Threads. I cannot figure them out. I'm on there as the same name. And if you're on there, go ahead and follow me. Say hey. But those are like, they're an enigma. I try to gain traction and I'm like, what do y'all want? What does this place want? I don't know. It's like a mixture of Twitter and Instagram, and it's like, who knows? But if you are wanting to follow more agents and editors and people on the traditional side publishing, and a lot of them are going to Blue Sky. So, and if you've never heard of it, it's called Blue Sky. I don't know why. So it just is.
There you go. No, that one's new to me, but I do feel like I blink and there's a new platform everywhere. And that's one of those things is I know I'm on a lot of them. I'm on a lot of them, but I'm not on everyone because there's always a new one. And I'm also that hesitant person because there's only so much time in a day, and I don't want to dedicate so much time on a new platform if it just goes womp womp.
Yeah.
And, okay, so a question, what is Blue Sky again? So how would you define Blue Sky? Just another social platform?
Yeah, it is almost very similar to Twitter. It's for those who didn't want to be on Twitter anymore and they like created this other app called Blue Sky. It's another place where you kind of just post pictures and statuses. So it's just a different type of Twitter. There's a lot of, like I said, a lot of industry people have moved on to there, and so I like to follow industry people just to see what's current, what's relevant, what's marketing, what are they looking for, things like that. So I'm not really posting on there, and I forgot I'm also on YouTube as well, but I'm just recycling TikTok material because it's like, hey, you got it, so yeah,
and I get that. And recycling material, I love doing that. Surprisingly, my YouTube channel is one of the few places that I have not yet chosen to recycle my videos here. The small ones. My lives I do, and then I have a series about mythological creatures from myth all around the world and legends stuff, because I'm a fantasy writer, so why not? But that's pretty much all I use it for. It's just a couple of these repurposed stuff, and the fun facts of myth and legend, but that's what I love.
Yes. I've tried the longer videos on YouTube and they don't do as well as my shorts. My shorts actually get more traction. So I was like, all right, I'll just keep posting those. I mean, I already have them made. They're from TikTok. Just put them through that app that takes the decal off and boom. So
I love it. Hey, yeah. Smart. And repurpose, I repurpose things on all the time. Instagram, Facebook. I rotate them in different ways so people aren't bored, but a lot of things different. Anywho, it's this marketing side of things. So, what was it that, well, actually, no, why don't you describe your characters from from either one of your books and just, who are they? What are they about? What makes them fantastic?
Fantastic. Okay. Well, since you said fantastic, let's go with fantasy. So my middle grade fantasy, the inspiration for it was so I used to teach writing classes in college, just in junior college. So it was a lot of English 101 and 102. And one of the plays that we always covered was Oedipus Rex. And if you're familiar with it, you'll be like, that's not appropriate for children. I only took bits and pieces of it. But the main thing was receiving a bad fortune at birth, foretelling of you destroying something. And so that's what my middle grade fantasy character, his name is Frederick, and he has lived in a tower his whole life by himself. He's 12 years old because when he was a baby, he received a fortune that he would in the future destroy the kingdom. So just to protect the kingdom, his parents put him in a tower. So it's almost like a Rapunzel-esque in that he's lived in a tower his whole life. But because he's lived in a tower his whole life, now he has had visitors like tutors and things like that who have come and the people that come that clean up his room for him and bring him food and stuff.
Not feral.
Yeah, it's not feral. But hasn't really had friends. Social interactions not great. He's read books on like how to be social, though he's never really had the opportunity to practice that. So he knows you wave at people or things like that. He's heard of dancing, but's never done it. Heard of music, but has never heard it. And so he's like a very quirky prince, and he likes to talk to himself a lot. And so he has multiple conversations with himself that when he does eventually escape the tower, sometimes people wonder, like, who are you talking to? Because they never know, are you talking to me or are you doing that thing where you talk to yourself again? So he's a really fun character. Love him. Like I said, super quirky, but has a great heart. And he eventually leaves the tower to go on a quest to do something heroic that will change everybody's mind. That's like, hey, what if I do something to save the kingdom? That should prove that I'm a good person and I don't want to destroy it, right? So his side character that helps him escape is a very spunky village girl named Mabel. She is running away from something. We don't know what at the beginning of the story, but she's very feisty, always has a dagger strapped to her side, is not afraid to use it. And she's like the fearless character that works with his, somewhat scaredy, quirky character. So, and those are like the two main characters of the story. And then the third main character is a cat, because I love cats. And this cat has been rumored to be the replacement for the prince, since he can't be the prince. He lives in the tower or he lives in the castle with his parents, and is dressed all nicely. His name's Theo. And Freddie hears the rumor that the cat is meant to replace him as their son, since he can't live at the castle. So
a little bit of a Puss in Boots situation, and combined with I don't know if you ever watched any of the Ghibli animes, but like Miyazaki, the director, is obsessed with cats. So there's cats in all of them.
Oh yeah.
The love of cats is very clear. But that's the thing, is it's so neat when you find out what is it that is the author's, that seeps through into the books. Everything, yes. But what is it, like the core aspects? For instance, like I'm obsessed with animals. I studied animal behavior. I worked at the zoo. I was a dog trainer. I was a wildlife rehabilitator, etc., so on and so on. All my fantasy books at this moment in time have a heavy undertone, if not full, right in your face, aspects of some kind of fantasy animal element, because I love it. But that's like me seeping through into my storytelling. So it's always kind of cool to see that.
I always put a cat in every one of my stories, whether they're a main character or they're just something off to the side that someone sees. I've decided for that to be like my little I guess, Easter egg. In all my books, there is a cat somewhere. So
I feel like now if you go to a bookish event, you have to have some kind of cat on your table.
I do.
Oh, you do? It just makes sense.
My middle grade fantasy, the one that is published, because their great aunt that they think is a witch, she has like 100 black cats in her house. And so I've found these super cute little stuffed plushie cats. So I usually have actually those little plushie cats for sale. And then I have one that is very life size, or it's life size and it's very lifelike looking. I've brought it into schools before and people have stopped me because they thought I brought a cat into the school. It's like, no, it's stuffed. It's a stuffed cat. But yes, I actually do have a cat on my table. Which is funny you should say that.
Hey, it just made sense. And I think those are the kind of things, the funny little quirks that draw people's attention. Be like, why is that there? And you're like, well, let me tell you. I have several reasons about that. But yeah, I could totally see, especially with spooky season coming up, you with the witch's hat and then your cat and all your books on display, and you'd be like, I have a story for you.
And I have a witch's hat as well. So
see, meant to be. Meant to be. But that's really neat. So kind of going back to like the booth thing, do you have any future events around you that you're going to attend at this moment in time, or are you waiting to schedule things as your own schedule opens up?
Well, next month I've got the school visit scheduled. And then there's a book festival in Alabama, the Summerton Book Festival. It's like their second one that they're having. Last year was our first year and they had a great turnout. And so I signed up again for it this year. And so that's another thing that I'll be doing. I filled out an application to do another workshop at that Phoebe Kegler Festival. Mm-hmm. Because they have it yearly and that's in March. So I possibly will be speaking at that one as well. So as of right now, those are the only ones. There were a lot of book festivals I would have participated in October, but they all seem to fall on the same weekend. Mm-hmm. So I did the one closest to me so I wouldn't have to be like paying for a hotel and everything. I can just drive to it. That's
smart. Yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing with the convention stuff, is anything that's in and around the area where either I know people that I can like crash at, or it's not that far away, because travel is expensive. After, especially if you do it more and more often and multiple times, and it adds up too. And the whole point is get your name out there and make some money and build your reputation and sell books and find readers and a lot of things. There's a lot of reasons.
If I can get that other fantasy published, I would love, because I know you went there a few weeks ago, I would love to go to Dragon Con, because there's a lot of authors that are on here that I would love to meet and I know go there, and Atlanta is actually just 3-hour drive from me. So it's not that far away. So that's something that it's like, if I can get that other fantasy book out and I can have at least 2 on my table, I would love to go to that and meet all of y'all.
Hey, yeah, and there are lots of different ways to approach that conference, that convention, because that is huge and overwhelming. If you've never been there before, it's a lot. But yeah, there's obviously, I'm going to side tangent for anybody who's just like, I don't know why you're talking about this, but for authors, there's the ability to have your full-time permanent book booth for the whole weekend. That's very, very expensive. Yes. I haven't even tried to do that one just because it's very, very expensive. But they do have, especially if you have at least one fantasy book, that Friday they have a 4-hour book sale called Fantasy Gather, and you can just come in, load up. Everybody who loves fantasy, sci-fi, all that kind of filter in, and it pulls a lot of people because it's just authors and authors and authors selling their books. And then there's the panel aspect, and to get your just name out there and meet people and kind of just talk about whatever you feel confident talking about, be it books, craft, some kind of fandom, all the above. But
do you know if do authors ever share tables at those events to help with cost?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, actually they are shared, and I don't know how it will be next year, but at the Fantasy Gather, the booths are free.
Wow.
Which is a rare thing. So you just have to show up there. You have to be there. You have to get accepted, obviously. Right. And usually they rank it if you're going to be on a panel, they'll bump you up because. So apply to be a professional, which is their panelist aspect, and if you get into that, it helps you with the other one. But yeah, it's free. 4 hours of sell time. Obviously, you set up and take down, but Yeah, the table that I was on this year, it had 2 other authors. And if you know people, you can also request people to be on your table. So then you have, if you have author people that are your buddies, even virtual buddies, you can be like, hey, can we sit together? We can sell each other stuff. It's always fun. But yeah, so I did like that one. And it was something that I'm looking forward to already for next year.
Yes. No, and I thought it was awesome because I saw the panel that you got to interview, and I'm like, I know them, and I know them, and I know them, just from here on TikTok. So.
Oh yeah, there are a bunch of us there, and there are more that I knew that there was a bunch of TikTok authors going there, and then I got there, and then I was like, oh, you're on there, you're on that platform, I know you from maybe Instagram. Where do I know you? It is fun. It's a small bookish world, and I love it.
Yes.
I absolutely love it. So as the hour is speeding on by, let me ask you, as well as everybody listening in, is there any topic that you wanted to cover that we didn't get to cover? Is there any questions that you wanted to ask that you haven't asked? This is the time to do so.
For me or for them?
Both. For both. All the above. All the above. So if you have like any special announcements or anything like that, this is that time.
Well, other than possibly having 3 books on submissions this fall, that's
so crazy.
Yeah, that's the main bulk of what I'm doing, and my brain is fried, so I'm very excited to do some leisure reading and do some mood reading. I'm very excited for that. But I can ask you, what are, because you kind of mentioned it some, what are you currently working on, and what more about, like, explain more about your book that you said is coming out this fall, maybe?
Okay, so I'm that weirdo that's we're always working on multiple projects simultaneously and at very different stages. So yeah. I have plenty of books on the back burner that if I took off a year, I would probably be okay. The following year would stress me out, so I'm not going to do that. But this fall, I have my final 2 novellas for my dark retelling that's Viking fantasy. So nice. There will be volumes 15 and 16 in October, November. That's the goal. I keep telling myself that's the goal. And that's what I'll be working on heavily tomorrow. I'm making sure my editor has everything they need for the final one. But once those publish, that will be my 2nd completed series, which is great because there are always those readers who wait till the series is complete. So it's nice to be like, this is done. Come and enjoy. As far as other things, I'm currently writing. I have 3 projects in the works. 2 totally behind the scene that I haven't really announced much about, and 1 series that's my young adult series that I'm continuing. So the 5th book will be published next year, and the 6th one's the one I was banging my head on the wall because I realized I had way too many storylines going, and now I have to like go back and kind of start getting them to come back together.
I've only worked on 2 books at the same time, and I thought, wow, this is awesome that I can do this. I cannot imagine doing more than 2, because two was a lot to separate worlds and characters and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
I think I like to stress myself out. I do always take on way too much stuff, but it's a fun challenge. I'm also that kind of challenge and goal-driven person, so if I didn't do it, I probably wouldn't know what to do with myself. So I'm always going to have multiple projects in the works, and my biggest thing is it's about time for me to look for another editor, because I definitely have so many works that I need at least another one so I can keep multiple projects moving on at a steady pace, and knowing that the one I have at the moment is moving closer to retirement. So I need to do that at some point too. Yuck. Finding new editors. It's not time that I want to spend, but it is a valuable time that I need to spend.
Is that some of your books behind you? They have beautiful spines. I've been looking at those because they look all nice and neat.
Yes. So as I said, it was towards the very end of last year is when I started selling books directly from my author website. And so these are some of the ones that I have. And when I make my videos, they're my back to
yes.
So yes, they're just examples of various books. My young adult series, my Viking series, my new adult series is hiding over that way. And you know, that's my author's copies. Woo.
No, so many books. That's amazing.
Well, I mean, That's the thing, is like for indie authors, one of the best things to be doing is writing the next book. And I'm sure it's very similar for traditional publishing, but you know, the benefit that as an indie author you can publish that much faster,
yes,
does help you turn around books that much quicker so you can get more. And then, you know, I'm saying this, but then there are people like you mentioned earlier, Brandon Sanderson, which, whatever, just, you blink and he comes out with another book. And I see a question popping up. What is new adult? Okay, I can answer that one because, hey, we're talking about all the age brackets. So when we were talking about age brackets earlier, middle grade, and then there's middle grade kind of ends around 12. Young adult starts at 13, goes to about 17. New adult essentially is almost, think of it as college age. It's about late 17, 18, all the way to your mid 20s.
Yep.
And because of that, a lot of times the topics are a lot more adult. In many ways, they can dabble with themes that you would definitely not want a 13-year-old to be reading in a comfortable way. So new adult is that kind of that great thing that people who still want to read characters their age and are not ready to pick up a book about a 30-year-old can kind of be comfortable with, okay, these are dealing with various situations a little more mature than what you would find a younger high schooler dealing with. And so that's kind of what new adult is. And for my fantasy, it is on the gritty side, and that's why I cater it. There's gritty. There's some other content that I would not be comfortable. I'm not a fantasy writer. I mean, I'm a fantasy writer, not a romance writer. So my books kind of bumped in there because of the age bracket, as well as the fact that they get kind of gritty as a war-based shifter fantasy series.
Yeah. I always say like ACOTAR is like a good example of a new adult series, because I think Feyre starts out like 18 years old in the first one, but it definitely has more adult content in the books.
Yeah, and I do think that's one of the things that books like that can muddy the waters, because you'll go into a bookstore and it's on a YA thing. You're like, should it really be on a YA section? Probably not. It would be better for new adult. Or if you don't qualify new adult, because some people just want to go straight to adult, probably bump it up to adult for comfort levels. But yes, ACOTAR is a great one. Let me see, but don't discount the different age groups because they all have something to... Yes, no, that's true. Like, there are definitely so many authors who love reading YA middle grade, and that's what they want to read. Yep. And I mean, I love books for all people. I have children's books on my bookshelves that I love all the way to adult. But the other way around is where I'm kind of a little bit more worried. You know, I wouldn't really want a 11-year-old picking up my Viking fantasy. Please don't do that. I would not be okay with that. Just saying. That's just me. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so unless anybody else has any other questions, comments, this is the time to do so. I see, because this app likes me to verify that I have been on for an hour. Let me do that little thing. Okay, I'm back. But this is that time to do so, and if not, thank you so much for hanging out with me this evening, and I've been excited to get to know you. I've been loving your videos on your platform, and they're hysterical.
Thank you.
I actually was checking a few of your latest ones, and I was getting a few chuckles. I can totally tell you. And I love when authors can be humorous about the plights of editing and the realities of one man's pain is another man's humor. I don't know.
No, honestly, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on here, for inviting me. This has been wonderful, so delightful. I've really enjoyed it, and thank you everyone for the wonderful questions as well. I was telling my husband the other day, because it's like I didn't have the creative juices to write, but I had the creative juices to create a TikTok, and I told him it's different, because those videos, there's like instant joy and humor from making those videos, where there's a lot of pain and eventual joy with the book publishing process. So it's like I feel rejuvenated, and like my creative juices, they like flow when I make a TikTok video. I'm like, okay, yes, now I can go write a book.
And again, if you're willing to laugh at yourself, you know, and you put something out there, there's going to be someone else who's like, I've been through that. I feel that. And as a bookish community, I do love this platform. I say it almost every time that I'm on here, that this is such a welcoming community, a vibrant community, an active one, a sociable one, and I absolutely love meeting other authors, readers, and audiobook narrators and editors.
Yes.
So many fun people on here to meet and get to know, and so many great books to read.
Agreed.
That's the amazing part, and I wish I had enough time to read them all.
Same.
Well, everybody, it is time for me to say goodbye, and because it's about 8 o'clock, which is my dog's let-out time, and he will be coming in and knocking down this ring light in a moment because he is that big. So I will have to say goodbye, everyone, and thank you again for coming out, and we will keep in touch, and I will try to remember to find you that information on that Cozy Fest.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your night.